Hello and welcome. Today is December the 6th, 2020. And there's a lot of things that are going on that are very uncomfortable in our culture, in our society, in our world, actually. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's promise of vaccines around the corner sometime in the spring, but we've been going through this COVID pandemic now in Austin since March, and for many places, even longer. So there's a lot of things that are going on that are very uncomfortable at this point in time. And as I was thinking about that, I thought about a couple of things. Number one is resilience. It's taken a lot for us to individually and culturally move our way through and navigate through the challenges that this pandemic has brought to us. It's been difficult. It's been very challenging. It's been scary. And we're getting tired, right? We're getting tired. But resilience has to do with the ability to move with that flow, to bend with it, not to break, and to keep navigating and keep moving through. The other thing that I thought about was about the new year is right around the corner. Just weeks from now will be the beginning of 2021. And the question then is, what are we going to do with that? Where are we going to go with that? How are we going to sustain? And while I was thinking about those things, a friend and colleague of mine came to mind. Her name is Ceci Zuniga. She's a PhD psychologist. And she and I have worked together before, many projects. And one of the things that she works with is the idea of grief and loss. We're all experiencing those things right now. So I thought maybe I could talk her into having a sit down with me. And she agreed. And I was very grateful to have the opportunity to spend some time with Ceci. I asked her to send me kind of a description of who she is because I don't like to make things up about people. I'd rather ask them how they would describe themselves. And this is what she sent me. Ceci describes herself as a self-love and empowerment coach because it's hard to describe what she does. These are fundamental parts of the personal development journey that she takes with clients. Years of formal study and practice in psychology, counseling, and educational psychology led to a 15-year career as a school psychologist. Disillusioned by the limitations of that profession and inspired by a near-death experience, she left her career behind to immerse herself in study and practice of more ancient healing wisdom rooted in such traditions as Native American, shamanic, yogic, Buddhist, and the Toltec Eagle Knight tradition. Today, she provides practical coaching on one hand and shamanic healing on the other to guide clients through specific processes that restore their personal power and rebuild sovereignty. You can learn more about her journey and her ministry at drcecizuniga.com. And so, with that, let's begin. Good afternoon, Ceci. How are you doing?
Hi, sorry, my mute thing was acting up. I'm fine. It's good to be here, and it's good to see you because it's been a while since we've been able to visit. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And the same goes for me. So it's good to see you again. So the topic that we were talking about, discussing today is about resilience and sovereignty in trying times. And I think it's probably arguable, I guess would be a way of saying it, that we're in trying times right now. So we got a lot of things going on, and a lot of people are talking about 2020 in terms of a descriptor for a bad day. And so as teachers and counselors and people who help people to adjust to times like this, what is it what is happening? Where are we right now would be a really good question.
True. There are There are a few different perspectives on that. One of my favorites is by a group that sees the world turning every 75 to 100 years, and they're calling this the fourth cycle of that. And what that means is there's cycles of creation and there's cycles of destruction. And this particular group is seeing this cycle that we are in now as one of those cycles of destruction, because things have to be shed that no longer serve our evolution in order for us as a human race, as a species, to evolve and as a planet to evolve. So what this particular group is saying and seeing is that we are in one of those phases of shedding to make space for, some people are calling it a new earth. I'm not sure I align behind that, but for a different frequency, a higher frequency of being to come in for our existence here and our experience here in this reality.
And I guess I would ask, is that where we're what I hear from people, clients, and friends is that there's this kind of a pervasive feeling of anxiety, and it's that free floating anxiety that you can't really tag anything with. And also the issue of grief comes in for all that we've lost, not just people, people we know and people we don't know, but also a way of life that we used to enjoy. So is that kind of our sense of that shift that you're talking about? Is that how we're responding to that? Do you think?
It's possible. The thing is, as human beings, we are wired to have feelings about the things that we value. And we also then attach to the way things are when we like the way they are. And those two things together leave us somewhat vulnerable to having worry, having anxiety. And then you lay on top of that a brand new situation that we are having to deal with as a planet, meaning with this COVID-19 virus, that people who aren't skilled at elevating their worry and anxiety to prayer or to a higher frequency, or they don't know how to emote it in a safe, healthy, productive way, it just gets really stirred up in our psyches. And then from the psyche, from the realm of the psyche, it enters the realm of our feelings, and then from there to our emotions, and then from there to our actions. So yes, I mean, we do have things that we care about, and so we are going to worry. We also have things we're attached to. So we are going to feel anxious about losing those things and even feel a sense of loss and grief should they change.
Okay, so there's a sense of uncertainty in beneath all this as well. It's like we don't know where we're going, and we don't know if this is all going to end. But I'm sure that in your trauma work, one of the things you tell people is everything changes, and it's not always going to be this way. We may not know when it is going to end, but it is going to change.
Exactly. And the interesting thing that I'm observing right now is that in the bigger scheme of things, this experience we are all moving through is not all that different from what we are always dealing with, because we never know how things are going to unfold. The difference, as I see it, is that we have had to make accommodations to things that were allowing us all to feel very safe and comfortable in our own selves that we typically haven't had to deal with in this country. Now, in other countries, they've had war, they've had devastating war, they've had to flee their homelands and leave everything behind. We, in our lifetimes, haven't had to deal with that kind of energy, that big of a change. And so in this country, we're pretty used to our comforts. Things that really drive most people in America's behavior are ease and our convenience and comfort. Convenience and comfort. And so both of those are gone right now. And so all of us are having to readjust our lives. And with that readjusting has come some big releasing in almost all arenas of our lives. Many of us are working from home now. Many people lost their jobs. Kids are being homeschooled more than ever. even how teachers are managing schools has changed. Every aspect of our lives as we interact with this 3D reality is different on some level, even if it's just putting on a face mask and making sure you clean your hands after you go out in public. That is all new, and it's not easy, it's not convenient, it's not comfortable. And so we are all being challenged to take a look at what we cling to, what we attach ourselves to, and what arises for us when that's challenged, when our comfort zone is challenged. And in any given arena on any day, that's the case. It's just that we haven't seen this level of challenge before, most of us.
That's a really excellent point. About this is like not just personal, it's not just family, but it's cultural. Then there's a social context for the United States, which is different from a number of other countries. And
Absolutely.
so maybe that's partly why we are struggling more than we think we ought to be, because we have no idea, we have no context for what we're actually experiencing at the moment.
I do believe that's part of what's going on. I mean, this is, of course, a complex and multifaceted experience we're all having, but I do personally feel that that's part of what's going on. We just have had a lot of comfort in this country, and we are very attached to our comforts and our opinions and perspectives. We're attached to our way of life. We're attached to everything being easy. And that's not been challenged for a lot of us. Now, that's not true for the lower SES communities in this country. So it just depends on your norm. And for a lot of us, our norms are being challenged either minimally or to a high degree. If we've had it really easy and convenient, and we've been able to live very posh, comfortable lives, to go to the store and not have access to toilet paper, for example, has just thrown everybody into a tizzy. It's this word has a lot of judgment around it, and I don't mean it that way, but in America, many of us are spoiled, meaning that things have been and are fairly easy and comfortable and convenient for us. It's just not the case in every other country.
Yeah, I agree, and that's probably part of why they don't understand what the heck we're doing over here, because we're out of their context as well. So that's a
Yes, and
different.
I guess what happens is that when people's comfort zones get stretched and they're asked to step out of them in some way, emotions flare. It's challenging their sense of sovereignty and safety inside. And so, of course, that stirs up from our foundations a lot of emotion.
True, true. And we're both fairly experienced in helping people to navigate change. And one of the metaphors that often comes up around the idea of transition, personally, is the idea of the caterpillar to the butterfly. Everybody can relate to the caterpillar suddenly becoming a butterfly, but it's not so sudden. There's this transition that happens in the chrysalis where the caterpillar turns to liquid and then becomes something else. And just on a personal observation, you have recently had quite a few photographs of chrysalises that you have been sharing on Facebook. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
It's so great that you brought that up because until this year, I more strongly resonated with this notion of a shedding of skins like a snake does, because they do that multiple times in their lifetime as they evolve and grow, and they enlarge and shed again and enlarge and shed again. But this year, this metaphor of the butterfly and the chrysalis has become very powerful for me, because in the yard, in this backyard here, there are plants that encourage the caterpillars to stay here and go through this process. And I had never witnessed the whole process from caterpillar to chrysalis to butterfly live before until this year. And I've gotten to witness it live twice now. And oh my gosh, I don't even know. There are just no words for it. One of the things I've become aware of that I wasn't aware of is how slow that process actually is compared to the story I had about it in my mind. which was that it was pretty quick, but it's actually a 14 to 20-day process. And even once they're back in the chrysalis, when they enter that chrysalis phase, it's days before they liquefy, and then another 24 to 48 hours before they come out. And then another piece I didn't know was that once they're free of their chrysalis, there's more evolving that they do. Their wings have to finish stretching and um, getting to the texture that they need to actually take flight. And so they hang out on that chrysalis for hours, if not a day or so before they actually take flight. And that was new to me. I hadn't known that or experienced it. And so being able to see that entire process from sometimes we even see where the caterpillar eggs are, and then we see all the baby caterpillars, and then I get to watch those grow up and get fat, which has just been amazing because they every day they're significantly larger in size. And then to see them scouting out their place to go and transform, and then to see their chrysalis, and then to see the chrysalis changing colors over that whole journey of going into their imaginal cells, which I like to refer to as imaginal selves, because they do liquefy and completely dissolve their old self to become this amazing butterfly. And the whole process is just so dear to my heart these days.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, I was trying to map your description of that process to the description of a person, maybe even a larger group, but a person to make it personal, and how we kind of expect things to move more quickly than they are, and that also adds to the anxiety because it's not happening fast enough, and then that feeds back into will this ever end? And the answer is yeah. You will become a butterfly, and this is not easy. It is hard work. It's just hard work. So kind of
Very true.
it's a wonderful metaphor, and I'm glad that you described that for me, because I actually did not know how long it actually took.
Hmm.
Me, it's like they just go in there and come back out again. No.
Right, right,
And so there's another layer to that metaphor. Thank you for that.
right. You're welcome. Yeah, a question that it raised for me was I just got very curious about whether or not the caterpillar has memory once it's a butterfly of having been a caterpillar. Because we do. I mean, we have the gift of being able to reflect on our journey and see those parts of it. And I wondered how that would serve or maybe not serve us to have that capacity. Like, what if we just let go of everything that happened before? And isn't that the teaching around presence and mindfulness, is just being fully engaged with the present moment and releasing anything that happened in the past so that each present moment becomes an opportunity for newness and birth of whatever is here to come through. And so it's a funny little question that arose for me after watching one caterpillar go through its whole process. Like, I wonder if that butterfly is celebrating, remembering how it felt to be a caterpillar.
That's an
I don't know.
interesting point. That's an interesting point. And I just want to clarify that whenever you talk about releasing things, you're not talking about like forgetting everything, because that would be a huge chunk of learning that we would lose if we were to forget everything. But I think what you're really talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, is being attached to that.
Mhm.
It's the attachment that's the problem.
You
Is that
know, that's partly accurate. There are a couple of lines of teaching around that, and one of them is the attachment to the past. But there is another line of teaching that is literally about releasing any connection, not just attachment to that past, even down to who you perceive yourself to be, so that you can just be who you are, fresh in each moment, so that we don't have any his or her story. So, this is a teaching I picked up in the Toltec arena, but they really encourage us to start fresh every moment, literally, not forgetting the learnings, because actually those are in our cellular memory. And I guess that's just becoming part of who we are. But all the stories that we carry forward about our lives and what they've meant or not meant, and the people in them and the relationships and everything. Because consider this, consider how interesting it would be if you had a conflicted relationship with somebody, and then the next day each of you were able to basically erase that and put it away somewhere as if it never existed and start fresh. You could just be and create in that relationship whoever and whatever you wanted if there was no history. It could just all be fresh. And it can be, but it takes a high level of awareness to do that and to stay on top of that. But it's just curious and interesting to me to consider how different our relating with each other would be if there was no past to hang on to. And then there's that teaching about pulling our wisdom that we've gained through our experiences forward. But I just feel like our souls take that learning and wisdom forward, and that we don't have to remember it with our psyche.
Okay, that really helps me to understand a little bit more about what you're expressing. Okay, so where we are right now is, as we touched on, where there's a lot of uncertainty about whether this will ever end, and there's also uncertainty about what we're going to find when we reach the end. You know, what is the end going to look like? And even more interesting to me is, what are we going to look like? What am I going to be? Who am I going to be at the end of this imaginal journey that we're going through to evolve from one state to another, whether we like it or not? And I think that there's some uncertainty about that as well. That's leading it, again, back into the anxiety. Something about, what is the future going to look like? You have any thoughts around that?
Well, the thing is, we never know that. And there's a catalyst that we're all dealing with now to generate more energy around those questions. But the reality is, we never know what our future is going to look like. We just don't know that. We have stories that we project about how it might look or how we'd like it to look. But then there's our attachments again. And a lot of our worry and anxiety is because we are afraid that what's going to happen isn't what we're hoping will happen. And we get attached to the way we want something to be. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, having anxiety and worry is just part of our emotional being. We're going to worry and have anxiety because we have things. And so it's not about trying to ignore the worry. It's also about not feeding all our energy to that worry and anxiety, because again, the reality is, we never know what we're evolving into. There's a lot of opinions and perspectives about what may be happening right now, but the truth is, none of us really know for certain. So it's not really any different than usual. One of my teachers always shares that one of the keys is to uplift that frequency of energy from worry and anxiety, which lives in our lower chakra centers, up into, through the heart and up into the higher realms as powerful, purposeful prayer, right? It's like setting all of that worry and anxiety energy into an intention or a vision of what you would like to manifest. Because there is that other teaching about that we are the creators of this reality based on our thoughts and our feelings, really.
Yeah, and that's really sort of a perfect place to start looking at it in a different direction for this. It seems to me that because a lot of people it feels like things are out of control, they have a sense of powerlessness, and it's that powerlessness that drives a lot of the concern. Is that I have nothing to do with this. How do I deal with it? And you talked about the teaching about moving the energy from fear and anxiety of the lower chakras into a higher place or a higher realm. And what I'd like to do is ask you about a few things that you would suggest. That how do people do that? Somebody who's not necessarily as advanced in their practice as you are. How do you talk about that so that I can understand what I can personally do to regain some sense of my own sovereignty around all this?
Yeah. Well, the first step is just having an awareness that you want to do that and a willingness, because without that, nothing will change. But there are some real simple things that we can all do. For me, some of the most powerful are sitting in nature. No headphones, no music, no nothing, just observing the natural world. And I think one of the reasons that's so powerful, and this isn't a new teaching, this is ancient wisdom. They teach this. But I think one of the reasons it's so powerful is because we are elemental beings. We are made of the same five elements that the rest of this 3D reality is. And so when we connect deeply with that natural rhythm and natural frequency of nature, it brings us back to our own natural rhythm and natural frequency that is so often overridden by all the noise in our culture. I mean, there's just a lot of noise in our culture, our modern day culture, and a lot of distraction. And we lose a lot in that. So that practice of mindfulness, sitting in nature, becoming aware and present with what is, all of those are not hard to do. You don't need any special gear or equipment. It's just a matter of bringing your attention to something different than what you're habitually used to bringing it to. And so
slowing down
and pausing with awareness, right? So one of my main practices has been to sit at some point in the day for maybe an hour outside, with just sit there and notice what's happening around me. Notice the construction sounds nearby, the squirrel digging for food, the bird sounds I hear, how the wind blows through the trees, what the temperature feels like, watching my cat play with something, hearing the dog bark, whatever it is. But that brings us out of all the external noise and into this place of presence with what is. And that simple practice on a regular basis helps build a different kind of internal frequency and sovereignty, because it helps us then start to resonate with the truth of who we are, our true selves, which is not these conditioned identities or selves that we tend to project into the world. Is something altogether different. So practices like awareness practices, mindfulness practices help us connect more deeply and intimately with who we truly are. So that's a simple way to do it. Another way that I personally make that connection for myself is in my yoga practice. And it's every day, Kriya and a meditation, at a minimum, a meditation, because that is the other way, again, ancient wisdom, that we come back to connecting more intimately with our true selves, our essential selves, as opposed to this conditioned self that's born out of our ego mind, which holds all of our fear, all of our attachments, all of our desires, and the things that we're resisting. But the truth self doesn't have that going on. So it's just a different frequency that we bring in when we make that connection. A yogic meditative practice I find really helpful, and for both coming into a stronger relationship with our true selves and just for building that sense of sovereignty and pulling our personal frequency up into the higher realms of our chakra system, where it's more helpful instead of being stuck in worry and anxiety. Another tool that I encourage clients to do when they can is to take walks in the natural world, whether it's a city park, a natural area, a state park, wherever you can get away from the sounds and sights of city life. And again, just be in nature. And there's something about walking and the movement through nature that adds another layer to what I'm talking about here. That really helps us shut off some static, as I call it, in our own energy field from what we take on living in the noise of a city and this culture and everything that goes with that these days. There's something about movement that helps us shed that. And again, if you can take a walk for 30 minutes to an hour, then when you're through with that walk in nature, you feel substantially different. I mean, I've never heard it from anybody to experience anything other than calm, a deeper sense of calm and sovereignty and connection to themselves after something like that. And really, the frequencies of worry and anxiety are staticky. They're heavy, they're dense, and they're frenetic. And so any kind of physical movement can help relieve some of that as well and make space for you to shift into another state of awareness or presence. So dancing to your favorite music, taking a brisk walk, going to the gym and exercising, anything that gets your blood and energy and body moving with the intent to flush all that heavy, dense energy out, allows for more spaciousness to bring some presence and awareness in. And that's really what helps us become more centered, balanced, and with a sense of sovereignty inside, is that we are connected to our true self. And so we aren't worried because we're connected to the larger field of what's happening through our true self, because actually we're never separate from that. You know, quantum sciences has shown us that everything is interconnected, even though we can't perceive it and we're not always bringing our awareness to that. So when we come into connection with our true self, we actually become a part of the larger field. And in that becoming, there's a peace, because somehow everything just feels okay. It feels as it, and everything's okay. So there's no thing that we need to be worried or concerned about, because the field is doing what the field needs to do. Make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And you used the magic word quantum, and you didn't finish the physics part, but I would like to spend a little bit of time thinking about that as well, because the issue for me, an issue for me, not the issue, but an issue for me is, what are we doing now in order to create ourselves as the being that we want to be when we come out of this? And a lot of people are wondering about, who am I going to be? And my response to them is, well, who do you want to be? And it's not like whether you are, fit and have a car and all that stuff, but it's, who do you want to be? It's the same question as we face quite consistently in working with people who feel stuck in their lives. And we're kind of like stuck right now. There's not a lot of movement that we can actually do, but we have a lot of time to give some thought and reflection to, who do I want to be when I do emerge from this chrysalis? What form of butterfly do I want to be? And and as we talked about before in different venues, it's like when you understand that, you have a fighting chance of doing it. But if you don't, you have no idea, you have no fighting chance at all.
Right.
And it's also important not to think about it as the doing of that, who that new person is, but the feeling of who that new person is. Who do I want to be is a feeling. And I can, this is my soapbox, I get on it fairly regularly, but the idea that if we focus on the feeling of who we want to be, that's the way to create the kind of change that we want to manifest. And can you add to that or subtract from that if I'm like off the rails?
No, I can certainly add to it, because that is the teaching of manifesting. That is the one key that a lot of people overlook when they do visualizations, for example, to manifest something in their life, is that it's really about connecting with the feeling state that you want to experience. Once you have whatever it is your mind is saying is going to give you that experience, because it's really not the thing. Nothing is the thing. Nothing that we feel is really about anything, meaning an object or a situation. It's really an internal job. And so when you think about it from this metaphor of the caterpillar going into the chrysalis, evolving in there and then coming out the butterfly, it's not that nothing's happening in there. And it's the same for us right now. It's not that there's no space to do anything. It's just the external interacting is diminished, but the internal activity for me has vastly increased, because, as you say, we do have time So how do we want to use that time? And we can use it to take on practices that grow and evolve us in a spiritual way, because that's the only way I know how to grow and evolve spiritually, is to do these practices that help break us out of our conditioned default patterns that keep us from being our true selves, which for me is really being in a state of deeper, more intimate connection with real love, so that our love that we carry is not connected or attached to any circumstance or situation. It's just us deeply connected to our natural inherent state, which is, according to the Tibetan Bon Buddhists anyway, who are, that's an ancient teaching, which our natural frequency is love, joy, compassion, and equanimity. That is those unmeasurables, as they call them, are our root soul essence. And so this evolving that we're doing is just taking baby steps towards being able to be those true forms of love, joy, compassion, equanimity, not based on a circumstance or a situation, but just because it's our essence shining through.
Excellent points. And another thing to consider is that when we talk about baby steps, as adults, those are like little things that it's cute. But to the baby, those baby steps are huge. And I think it's important for us to recognize that when we make those baby steps, we need to celebrate a little bit and understand what's going on, that we are evolving, we're changing, we're creating ourselves in a way that, in a direction that we want to.
You bet.
Yeah. So don't deride baby steps if you're inclined to do that in our audience out there. Baby steps are really big, and they all add up to something else even bigger.
Exactly. And I think by design, I think it's easiest for us to go in baby steps, because if we look at our evolution from an energetic perspective, if we jump too rapidly from point A to point B in an energetic sense, we literally fry our energetic system. And that's really hard to recover from. So I believe, I'm one of those believers, that we move through our journeys in just perfectly divine timing for our soul's evolution, so that we're not overwhelmed with something that is too much for us to handle or fries our system, so to speak. So that we can actually embrace whatever the teachings are that are coming our way. So yes, absolutely celebrate every awareness, every aha moment, every baby step where you notice that you are interacting or relating with something that used to create struggle or suffering in a completely new way that no longer does. Certainly, that's an important piece of this. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I would also like to hear a little bit more about frying our system, because I have run into some folks who basically are describing what they're experiencing as a burned out neurological system. And I think that kind of experience is real. I mean, I've seen people go through it, and they don't really know how to describe it. So they often talk about it as a Kundalini rising experience, and maybe sure they know what that means. But one of the things that is important, I think, to make sure that people know is that when we're moving a lot of really high frequency energy, our body is a very low frequency state. And when we're running a lot of energy through it, then our body can get tired. We can get sick. We can have, bad dreams. I mean, it's a kind of a across the board burnout. And so what we have to do is to take care of our bodies. Our bodies will catch up, but we have to take care of them while the body is evolving into that new alignment, for lack of a better word.
Perfect. It's true, because I would phrase it a little bit differently, which is our bodies are dense. And when we try to move energy, which is the total opposite of density, through, there's a building that needs to happen, a preparation. Like you don't want to throw 2000 watts of electricity through a 20-watt bulb, because what'll it do? It'll explode. And that's essentially not that different from what we're talking about when we're working with our bodies energetically. Our bodies are dense. They're made to be dense so that we can interact with this reality. And so we have, I'm going to get a little bit yogic now, but by the tradition, the Kundalini tradition that I study and practice, we have this central channel that runs along the spine. And this isn't the only tradition to speak of that. I mean, the chakras work the same way. But the Sushumna channel that runs along the spinal column feeds all the energy that we're bringing into our body into the rest of our extremities and organs to be used. And so absolutely, when every time we take a breath, we're bringing in fresh energy and oxygen into this body. Every time we expel a breath, we're releasing spent energy and oxygen out of this body. And it is a constant flow. So this idea of burning out or frying your system happens when too high of a caliber and too intense of a degree of energy flies up that Sushumna channel, that central channel, and it literally fries your nervous system because it's not expanded or open enough, or there's too much congestion in it, let's say, for that high intensity energy to move through easily. And so again, it's like shoving 2000 watts of electricity into a 20-watt bulb. It just can't handle it. And it does fry that system. Now, we're talking about this in a very basic way because it's a very complex principle in reality. But that is one way to look at it. And so that's another reason why going slowly with energy practices and slowly with your own awareness about what you're playing with in your system, in the energetic arena or otherwise, even just in meditation and doing yoga, you're working with your energy body. So to be aware of that and graduate yourself in, it's like if you've never worked out in a gym, you're not going to go lift 5,000 pounds. It's the same thing here. We just aren't used to working with our energy because we're not taught how, but we do need to manage it in a way that helps it evolve along with us and us evolve with it. Otherwise, yeah, you pull in too much, too fast, too high of a frequency, and it can't work through what I call the muddiness in your energetic system in your body. And that can create all kinds of problems. People get dizzy, they pass out, they throw up, they have headaches, they black out, they crash energetically. And I mean, I've known people that it's taken months to try to rebuild their energy system, not because they were ill, but because they, without realizing it, pulled too much in for their system to handle. And it's a long, hard recovery. So I don't recommend it.
I know some folks who've experienced that, and it's taken them years to even sort out what it is that's going wrong, much less what to do about it. So yeah, it's something you have to prepare for. And so I don't want to go too much into the Kundalini yoga experience. That's a whole different topic. But there are some things that you need to do to prepare for that. You need to take care of your body for one thing. You need to take care of what you're feeding it and all those sorts of things as well. But and actually taking care of your diet and taking care of what you're taking in is a good thing to pay some attention to right now, because energies or what we're experiencing are challenging to our bodies as well as to our minds and our psyches. Is that accurate, do you think?
Totally accurate. Totally accurate. I mean, we can't separate our physicality from the rest of our experience. Our physical bodies, our mental bodies, our emotional bodies, our spirits, and our energies are all entangled and working together through this system. So yes, ideally, we want to be attuning to and attending to all of those parts to have a healthy, strong balance. Now, I think people get into trouble because they have misunderstanding about what like Kundalini rising or pulling in energy or working with energy means. And some people just want to take a fast track or a speed train to spiritual evolution. And I want to make a point that it doesn't work that way. And there's no benefit that comes from rushing through your own spiritual evolution. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, we hear these stories of spontaneous awakenings. That's great. But if that's not your soul's journey, we don't need to force that to happen. Either it will happen or it won't. So there's no benefit that comes from trying to rush ourselves through our spiritual evolution. That's just, again, it tends to be a default pattern in our culture. We are fast paced, everything instant driven right now. And so it takes some effort to let yourself slow down and be with what is and not rush anything. But we are more and more and more conditioned to speed, unfortunately, which I think is a disservice.
Yeah, I think one of my teachers pointed out that that's really in the Americans' DNA, is to go fast, 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 fast. You know, they were the ones who crossed the ocean and conquered an entire world in order to make our place. So that's, we're genetically selected in a way to just be type A personalities, and we really need to watch out for that. We talked a little bit about. There's two directions that my brain just went. One is we've talked about the idea of dreaming a new future. The notion that if life is a dream, then we have the ability to change that dream, to dream a new dream. So that's one, and that may be a topic for like a future podcast at some point. But the other one was some simple practical things that you might suggest to people other than walking, sitting in nature, which are both really, really important and really, really good. Can you offer some, quick, notice how I'm going with the quick part?
Yes,
Quick
I
and
can.
simple.
I mean, there are a lot of tools out there. One of my favorites is journaling, because what we're talking about, people are seeking peace inside. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't want to just feel peaceful inside and fulfilled inside. That's really an inside job. Ultimately, it's not going to come from anything outside of us. So the task is really to build our own set of skills and tools that we can, what's the word, that we start to cultivate that state internally, no matter what. And again, just like anything that we're learning, we have to put our attention and our awareness on that, because we want our energy to feed those things which are going to cultivate inner peace. Those things, by any ancient teaching, happen to be awareness, mindfulness, meditation, so those pieces are essential. Another part of that I love is journaling, because journaling allows us to reflect on our journey and our evolution, and it gives us an insight that sometimes we can't get in other places. So I'm a big fan of writing things down and using a journal to both release heavy energies and thoughts from the body rather than continue to cycle them, and to be able to then reflect on that and harvest the lessons and the growth out of past experiences. So journaling is another great one.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, it's taking Epsom salt baths. That's a great way to flush your energy system and your auric field, your energy field, of any slime, as I call it, that might be stuck on it. So a simple Epsom salt bath can be a way of finding some relief. I love sitting under a full moon. That's another way, particularly for women, to find some sustenance and get some pure energy coming into your system. I mean, there are also tools and practices you can do to connect with the Earth's core energy and the solar energy, and pull those into your body to help purify and raise your own inner frequency. There are also very specific pranayama exercises to build your energy circuits in your body, so that you can pull in higher frequency, more intense energies without frying your system. So there's a lot that can be done, and they are specific techniques, but they're not hard to do. Anybody can do them and learn them. And I highly recommend any and all of those personally.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate all that. Appreciate the list. Um,
Yeah.
So I know that you have a website, and I'm going to put up what it is again. Do you know, or you have any other resources that you would point people to so that they can deepen into what we were talking about today?
Well, I mean, today we are graced with the internet. So you can Google things like mindfulness and find some great teachers, yoga, meditation, find some great resources. Even on my website, I have a meditation primer that explains a lot of what we're talking about in terms of mastering our mind. Because the thing is, we are taught to run our lives out of our minds and from our reasoning and rational thinking, which is helpful, but that's really meant to be a tool. It's not meant to be the place we guide our lives from. We are intended to guide our lives from our intuition and our heart wisdom, which is a much higher frequency. So I have some tools on my website for that purpose, and you can find them online, but they all mostly will cycle back around to mastering what you're telling yourself, the stories you're telling yourself, um, the stories you're telling about other people, the beliefs you hold. It's all this mental messiness that we get as we get conditioned into our conditioned selves growing up. And so there are a lot of resources out there. I would just point people to any kind of mindfulness or self-awareness practice. And again, there's several teachers. You just have to find one that resonates with you. I mean, even Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey have these 21-day meditation cycles that provide a really beautiful 5 or so minute teaching, and then he takes you through the mantra meditation for another 10 minutes or so. They're less than 20 minutes, all of them, and they're 21-day cycles. They're beautiful, and they're really helpful and easy to do, and they're free. At least the first time they run them, they're free. And then I think if you want to purchase them, you can. So, I mean, I always gravitate, as you're starting to see, towards meditation, because I have come to see in my 20 years of doing this yoga practice that meditation to master what's happening in this mental arena, this conditioned self, is the foundation of everything else. Because once we master that, meaning we put the driving wheel of our life into our heart and use our heart wisdom to be our driver of our car in life rather than our conditioned self, everything starts to shift. So any practice that brings us to a place of more mindfulness, more presence, being able to clean up our old wounds so that that energy can flow more freely through us, through our thoughts and our words and our actions. All of those practices, I mean, this is the Aquarian age. We no longer have to seek for that information. It is at our fingertips on the internet. And there are teachers everywhere, and everybody's doing virtual classes. So it's very easy to access.
Great. Thank you so much, Ceci. I think I've come to the end of my list. Is there anything in particular that you would like to say that you don't think that you've expressed to this point?
I know we had touched very loosely on loss and grief, and I know that's a big thing for people right now because we are having to let go of a lot. So I would just encourage people to familiarize themselves with the stages of grief that we go through after a loss, because we're all letting go of things that we're not used to letting go of, and more rapidly than maybe we're used to. And so that is having an impact on our energetic and emotional bodies and our mental bodies and beings. So to stay present with how you're feeling and give yourself spaciousness to feel whatever you need to feel without judgment, and to release those feelings in a way that's productive, safe, and healthy, like journaling or talking to a good friend, or allowing yourself space to cry as you need to. But to realize that we are all moving in and out of these stages of grieving after of grief after a loss, because we're all experiencing losses. Even if somebody that we know personally hasn't died because of COVID, we're all experiencing losses on different levels. And so that energy tends to weigh on us. And that's part of what feeds the worry and the anxiety that we started talking about. So I'm going to invite everybody to be sure and give themselves the space that they need to feel whatever they need to feel without judgment, and to find a safe, healthy, productive way to move those emotions, that emotional energy, out of their body, out of your body, so that you can have the spaciousness to then sit in presence and bring in awareness and hold love and shift those heavy frequencies to higher frequencies inside.
Great. Very well said. Thank you for going back to the grief process, because that's where we sort of began. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something we're all going through, and none of us like it. So, anyway, thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with me today, Ceci. Again, it's always a pleasure to sit with you and um, learn. You're
Yeah.
one of those side teachers that comes in every once in a while, and I appreciate that.
Thank
So,
you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to sit and have this conversation with you. I know that we always connect in a really deep way, and I'm appreciative of that. It always inspires me.
okay. Thank you so much, Ceci. And I guess I will let you go, and we will be back with more later.
I hope so. I would love to. Thanks,
All right.
Gary.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.